Hello YouTube, this is Jared here, and I have a review a review over the 43, the Glock 43, and the Kahr PM9. And this will kind of be I guess it'll be sort of a double review, a comparison between the two. I'll say what I like and dislike about each, and why I think they're both good. And yeah, we'll get started on that. This Glock 43 I've had for 2 or 3 days now, and the Kahr I've had for about 2 years. But let me go ahead and talk about why they're both good. Um, the main thing is the size. They are literally the exact same height. The Glock 43 is about 3/4 of an inch longer or so, and thickness is more or less the same on both. They're both extremely thin, but I picked up the PM9 2 years ago just because at the time, compared to the Shield and the PPS and the XDS, it was pretty much the smallest, shortest single stack 9mm on the market. And to me, the height and the thickness is really the two most important dimensions when you're trying to conceal something. With this one, it pretty much disappears in your waistband, but it's also small enough to be carried on the ankle. And I do that sometimes, just depending on where I'm at. But with the Shield, at least with my body type, the Shield and the XDS, those are just a little bit too long in the grip. If I bent over or something, they'd probably be poking out of my shirt. And I never tried carrying them on the ankle, but I imagine it'd be a little bit harder. But if you have a bigger body type or big calves, then you might be able to make do with those. But in general, I think the single sec nines are about the best balance of firepower and convenient concealability, all that stuff. But for me, the PM9 and the Glock 43 are about the best two choices on the market just because of that extremely low height and really with thinness, they're all pretty much the same. But the 43 being longer, that doesn't really matter to me just because that's what's going down your leg or down your hip. So that doesn't matter to me so much. And they are both 6+1. Of course, the Shield is 7+1, and I think the XDS may be as well. I'm not sure on that. So you are losing one round, but I think it's worth the trade off having the better concealability just for me. So let me go ahead and talk about the Kahr specifically. It has the main difference between it and the Glock here is this different trigger. It has a long, heavy trigger, whereas the Glock, like all Glock triggers, has the take up and then the shorter break. The magazines are, of course, steel. This one came with factory night sights on it. They're the Meprolite True Dot. I like them. Um, Otherwise, it's just your standard polymer frame striker fired gun. With the 43, it obviously has those plastic sights that Glock always puts on. I don't really care about that. I don't like these. I have a set of night sights on order, 3-dot night sights, and I mean, from a gun manufacturer's perspective, I can see why they would just put these cheap sights on because everyone has their different opinions about what type of sights they like. You might as well put cheaper sights on, sell the gun for a little cheaper, and let the individual user pick whatever sights they want. So I don't really count that as a downside to the Glock. When we're talking about the trigger here, it does it has the form of the Glock trigger, meaning it has that take up and then that short break, but it is definitely heavier than all the other Glock triggers, at least the ones that I've had on the 19 and the 26. Um, I have a 19 here actually, and it almost feels like a hair trigger in comparison to that. Um, that's a slight exaggeration, but they're just extremely they're different. The mainly in the weight, and the take up on the 43 is kind of mushy in comparison to the 19. So I'm not sure if there's a mechanical reason behind that because they made it slimmer. They couldn't get it to be as smooth or as light as the standard Glock triggers, or maybe because it's so small that they wanted to have a heavier trigger just for safety reasons or whatever. So that is one of the downsides. I still like the this trigger over the Kahr's trigger just because of it has that short pull. But I will say that the Kahr's quality of the trigger is better. It has it's very smooth. It has a nice crisp break, which the 43 has a crisp break too and a good reset, but it's heavier than both the 19's trigger and the Kahr's trigger. Um, one advantage to the 43 here, I did say that it's longer, and that gives you a longer sight radius, so that does help a little bit. But my biggest surprise when I first picked up this 43 is how much bigger it feels in the hand than the Kahr does. The Kahr, when I'm holding onto it, I mean, I get a solid 2 fingers on there, which is really all you need, but I mean, my pinky definitely can't go on there. It's just barely scraping the magazine well there. So it definitely feels small. When I picked up this 43, I can almost get 3 fingers on it, about 2 fingers and a half, and it just felt more like a regular gun almost. The reason for that, I found out, is if you look at these side by side, look at where my thumb is in relation to the bore axis on each gun. On the 43, it's so much higher, and on the Kahr, it's way down there. And so, of course, when my hand comes up farther, it brings these other 3 fingers with it. So that's why it feels bigger. It's just that distance right there is is a lot lower on the 43. So that helps with muzzle flip too and controllability of the gun. I will say that I did shoot this one better than I did the Kahr, even though I've had the Kahr for 2 years and I had just got this one for that was my first time shooting it just a couple days ago. So I do like that better about it. Another thing, and this is going to vary from person to person, is when I shoot the Kahr, it really, after a while, it hurts this part of my finger, and I guess when I pull the trigger, this trigger guard just kicks up and just smacks my finger every time. Really, after only 2 magazines or so, I mean it becomes kind of painful to shoot, and the 43 doesn't do that to me at all. I know. So I said that varies from person to person. I know on a Hickok's video, he said that the 43 actually hurt his finger, and he even had that band-aid on his finger on his one video. But he never mentioned anything about that with the PM9. So it may just depend on where you have your finger when you pull the trigger and um, just how big your finger is or whatnot. But there's a definite. This one's more comfortable for me to shoot. It doesn't hurt my finger at all. But this one, yeah, it really punishes you after a while. Another advantage to the 43 is going to be aftermarket support. So, I mean, that kind of plays into what I think about both the sights and the trigger. Uh, Possibly the only two weak points of the gun, but I mean, you're going to be able to find any kind of sight you want, and I know people are going to be coming out with different connectors or probably entirely different trigger assemblies. So there's going to be plenty of options for that, but I mean, I still like it as is, but I know that there'll be improvements in the future if I want to make those improvements. Um, so so overall, I mean, I definitely prefer the 43, as you've probably figured out by now. These are probably still my two top choices in terms of what I would want to carry, just because they're both about the shortest single stack nines out there. There may be one that's just as short, but I'm not aware of it. So I mean, these still be my top two choices, but this is definitely my top choice. I just have a much fuller grip on it, and it feels more like a full size gun to me. I like the short pull of it, even though it's not as good of a pull as this, but I still like having the short pull, and I do like the cleaner side to it. This Kahr, it has this big takedown lever here, and when you're getting your other your support hand onto it, it's just kind of there in the way. But I mean, that's just more of a personal preference thing to me. So that's one thing I like about this. Um, yeah, they both come with a spare magazine, extended magazines. The car does hold 7 in this spare. This one only holds 6. So it is kind of weird that they would put the peak extension on, but not have a extra round. But like I said, there's going to be plenty of aftermarket support, and I know some companies already have extensions for this, so it's hard to even complain about that. So I always like to look at both what's in the box and what the potential of the gun is, given what the aftermarket accessories are. So that's all. That's my review for both of these. I think they're both really good choices. You probably need to feel them both in the hand, and especially feel the trigger in the hand if you can't really decide between the two. But I know the other single sex nines, they would all be good choices. I've felt the Shield before, and the PPS, the XDS, the LC9. They're probably all really good choices. Just from the size, I like these two the best. But hopefully this helped you out, and thanks for watching.